So the last one we have is Pulse, the Pulse Reader, which is an iPad, Android, and iPhone app. And we are sort of woefully prepared for a mobile demo, mostly due to my fault. So we can't actually show it to you that easily, so we're going to go with the video that they've created, and then we'll take a look there. So
Yeah.
it's,
Okay. Just so that I can cater my talk, who's heard of Pulse before? Who's used it? Okay, not many of you. All right, so thanks for having me. I'm Akshay Kothari, and I'm one of the co-founders for Pulse. And the quick story is I was with my co-founder in Stanford last year. It was the last quarter. Both of us had corporate jobs, and we were trying to somehow stay away from them. And so we really wanted to kind of start a company. And there were two trends we saw when we were in school. One was that increasingly everybody around us, and it could be Stanford, but like everybody was reading their news on mobile devices. It was phones back then, and increasingly moving into tablets. And then the second thing we noticed was that, gone are the days when you would go and read one newspaper and be done with it, and that would be it in terms of your news consumption. Today you go to New York Times, but you also want to go to a few blogs, and you also want to go to Facebook and Twitter and kind of read news there. And so people were kind of getting their news stories from a bunch of different devices or a bunch of different sources. And so what we wanted to do is bring all these sources and give you an experience that's really visual, that's really, makes you want to read news a little bit more again. It doesn't feel like your, daily chore that you have to do, but it brings out the images, it brings out the color of the news. And so we took a class at Stanford called Launchpad, and it was really cool because there was no business pitch or business plan bullshit. It was just like build your product and launch it. And so we did. We basically spent 5 weeks and we launched Pulse while we were still in school. And here's the first video we made that kind of introduces the product. And so basically, this was our first app. It was made for the iPad. And the way it worked was it kind of arranges your news in different streams. So you have different streams of sources that you kind of want to read. And horizontally, you can go deeper into a source. And if you like a story, you can just click on it and then kind of read it right there. This was actually the first version of the app, which has changed quite a bit since then. But the basic idea was like, I should be able to kind of get 20 different sources and kind of view it right here. And then I should be able to kind of share it with my friends or tweet to my followers. And the basic kind of focus was like, let's bring out the pictures of the news stories a little bit higher. And so we released this thing, and we didn't know. I think we're still students, and we were like, we kind of put $4 as the charge, and we had bought 2 iPads. And so I remember clearly when I told Ankit, it'd be nice if we sell about 300 of these, we'll at least recover the price of the iPads. And it was a very small dream. And the next thing we knew, like a couple weeks later, Steve Jobs mentioned it in his keynote. And a funny story there was Ankit and I both were kind of sleeping, and we got phone calls. It's like Pulse was mentioned in the keynote, and suddenly we got thousands and thousands of downloads. And so slowly this small little class project became into a company, and we were slowly thinking about office space and thinking about how are we going to hire people. And fast forward, it's been about 10 months, and we're at 3 million users, more than 3 million users. We've expanded into iPhone and Android. And phones now actually are a big part of what we do. And I think one of the needs we're kind of solving here is, you're in line for a coffee or you're waiting in the train and you have these small moments every day. And sometimes you go to Facebook or Twitter, and I think like we're trying to solve this where you can actually spend those few minutes and really inform yourself about what's going on in the world. And what's kind of resonated with people so far has been the user experience, but I think there's a lot more that we can do on kind of news reading. And so we're a small team still. We're 8 people. We're based in Palo Alto, and we're looking to hire a lot more engineers now trying to manage the growth we've seen. So if you're interested, please do reach out. I think there are 2 problems that we're looking to solve right now. The user experience was the first part that we kind of people have resonated with it. But I think a big problem remains where how do you make it more relevant to a particular person? How do you personalize it for that particular person? And then secondly, I think the whole aspect of news when you read it, like there's an aspect of social that's missing in our world right now. You definitely share it with Facebook and you share it on Twitter, and that's one way to do it. But there is an opportunity here to have meaningful conversations, meaningful discussions about a particular news story you just read. And we don't know the answer to that, but I think it's an interesting problem to think about. So,
Great. Thank you. Questions?
So there have been some legal issues about aggregating other people's news and not paying them for it. So how do you work that?
yeah, so I think right from the start we've been focused on, I think the least common denominator for us is RSS feeds, which are public feeds. And then we've actually worked with a lot of publishers. We actually have over hundreds of publishers who've given us premium content. And so the least common denominator being RSS feeds, like all the publishers, we haven't had any problems except for an initial glitch we had when we started the project. And I think like publishers are recognizing it's that, when people were printing newspapers, that was a distribution model, was your newspaper boy who was giving out, coming to your home. And I think Pulse is a distribution platform for that small bursts that you have every day that you want to read news for. So far, no problems, fortunately.
Where does the revenue come from?
So right now, I think we were a paid app. We were a paid app until late November, and so we went free about 4 months ago. And we've seen this enormous growth in terms of the user base. And what's that's done is actually it's made the whole aspect of content that's given into Pulse a lot better. And it's also, we thought reading news that you kind of subscribe to is great, but it actually becomes better when your friends are on the same platform. And so right now our focus is distribution to a point where we can create this experience where you can connect with your close friends or your family. And I think there are not too many different buckets of monetization here, but if you think about it, it's a service or it's a product that you're spending 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes every day, and there are ways to monetize that. But our focus right now is distribution.
So the NPR web app for the iPad has a lot in common with your native app. It has the 3 scrolling ribbons, square stories with pictures, click through, and all the rest. I just wondered, did you think about doing yours as a web app, and why did you choose to do it this way and not that way?
Yeah. So I think the NPR app is not the only one. I think since we've released, I think if you try the BBC app on your phone, there have been actually like startups which have taken the UI, and I think we take that as, we're flattered people are liking the UI that much. In terms of actually like thinking about, we actually believe that a lot of consumption is actually happening on mobile. Like I sometimes sit in front of my computer, and if I want to read TechCrunch, gone are the days where I would actually want to go through the website because it's so linear. I'm actually reading it on Pulse. And so right now, I think we're focused very much on mobile. Having said that, we feel that there are things that you can do on web a lot better than on the mobile. And so if you think about maybe managing your feeds or managing your settings and maybe discussing it online with comments, I think that aspect actually happens better on the web.
No, but I mean, not web or mobile web.
I think right now we've put a lot more resources on native mobile apps. Not because one experience is better than the other. I feel like distribution is easier when you have a native app. So I feel like the App Store and Android market is a good discovery platform. So it doesn't get lost in the.
Steve Jobs wouldn't have mentioned it if it was a web app, but he mentioned it as a native app.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good reason.
So it seems like you have something really good. Have you thought about who can put you out of business?
Who can put us out of business?
Or what technology, or what can put you out of
I think we're very consumer focused right now, so we don't think about those things. I think we have a product that's being used extensively, and people are liking it. So
what can put you out of the norm?
I don't know. I don't think about those things. Yeah. Go for it.
How do you manage content freshness and how do you cluster results so that similar things come together, I guess, in your product?
So that's one of our focuses right now, is to make that experience a little bit better. Right now it's real time, so you can update it and the new stories kind of fill in. But clustering is an interesting problem. I think there have been interesting apps out there which kind of subscribe to topics, and that's kind of an interesting thing. And so we are kind of working on that on that space and making that whole content come alive a lot better. So.
One more?
Akshay, how do you compare this with Flipboard?
Flipboard. So I think we kind of vie for the same time that iPad users are spending, but it's a completely different model, I think. Right from the get-go, we've been focused on kind of expanding our kind of platforms and different devices. We want you to have an experience so that if you're in Starbucks with your phone, you can have the same experience that you're having it, say, sitting down on your couch at home. And the way the different interactions have laid out, like Pulse is very different from Flipboard in the sense that it's a lot more dense, but at the same time it's visual, so you can actually consume a lot of information. And I think there are different interaction paradigms that will play out in the next couple of years. I mean, it's nice to be able to kind of flick through different stories, but it may not be the most efficient way to consume news. Because you're only seeing 3 articles per page, for example. So I think the consumer is king here, so we'll see what interactions they actually play out.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm definitely not paid by these guys. I just met them a few minutes ago, but I will say I use a lot of different reader apps. And if you have an iPhone or Android device, download Pulse. It's the best one I've ever used. So it's a great reader app. That's my sort of personal endorsement. You can write me a check later.